to begin.
Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Social Primate Podcast. We got the one and only Cindita Macias in the studio today. Hey, Cindy.
Hello.
Dude, thank you so much for making the time out here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so excited. A little nervous, but I think that's like normal.
Yeah, you know, if it makes you feel better, I'm always nervous before every podcast. So, like, you know, we're somewhat in the same level. You know, I wanted to have you on the podcast because I was mentioning to you off air that over the last couple of months, you know, maybe sometime mid-year last year, I first started coming across your name. You know, like in Ontario, there was some stuff that you were doing at the museum. I saw that you did some stuff at Horchateria with the Mind Buzz podcast, and I think they had some event with some open mic or poetry, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And among other stuff, you had stuff in Art Space HP, like countless things that I've been seeing you kind of be consistent with. And, you know, one of the things that I like looking forward to just these type of episodes is that I get to kind of bring these people in and, you know, kind of find out more about how you maneuvered through this creative world of yourself.
Yeah. I think the first time I came across your stuff was at the Arts Festival.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You guys were like going around and you guys interviewed some of my friends that day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did do some mini interviews across that afternoon. We were walking around and just interviewing the vendors. We didn't get to everybody because we were running out of batteries. It was super hot that day. It was like, I was sweating. I looked probably all freaking like...
Oh, my God.
Like todo like you know, desarreglado. So I was like, hey, you want to do an interview? You know, so it was a fun night. But yeah, that's cool that you saw me there. This is one of the first times that I went out there, and you were vending there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. I know there's a Cindita's Tiendita, right?
Yeah. So I always say the origin story is that in elementary school, I was in third grade. Mm-hmm. They gave me this like heart association box, and I was supposed to collect donations, and I did, but I ended up keeping the money. And I bought candy at the Compton Fashion Center, started selling it at school. I got caught. They told my mom, and my mom was like, let's just open up a candy house. Because where I grew up, like, candy houses were the thing. Like, I know where to go for everything. Mm-hmm. And so we just started selling candy out of the living room. And it lasted like 10 years in Compton until we moved to Downing. It didn't do very well. I feel like the culture was not really there for that. But then I've picked it up again. It's going to be 3 years this week.
Oh,
and yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Like, where did that come from for you? Is it just like the need to kind of like just make some extra money, or was it like you just enjoyed, you know, just the selling part of it?
I think just like probably both. Mm-hmm. Because before I started selling stuff, I started making art again. Mm-hmm. And that was through therapy because I was doing psychotherapy, so it was very like body. And I remember doing like a tapping session and visualizing. Mm-hmm. And I just saw myself as a kid making collage on the floor. Mm-hmm. And my parents were like, ay, Cindita, with her cochinero. And so I started crying. I was just bawling. And then my therapist was like, well, I came up and I told her, she was like, what if we try art therapy? So I started doing collage again, not really as a form of selling it. Mm-hmm. It was more for me to express myself and tell my story and just be with myself.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually I started playing with beads. Mm-hmm. And I made these heart earrings just for myself. And then people were like, oh, those are so cute. Like, can you make me some? And so that's kind of where it started, just people wanting their own set of earrings. And part of what I started off with is that I make works, tangible pieces that tell my story in a way. And they're meant to be put in the places and spaces to adorn. So if it's your room, if it's your office, if it's your studio, or if it's your body, you know, wear your earrings or your waist chain or whatever it is that I make. Sort of a way of like reclaiming my narrative and turning the painful experiences into something tangible that I can kind of like let go.
That takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to be able to, first and foremost, kind of put yourself in that mindset again with that weight that you already carry yourself, and then try to release it for others to kind of like consume, you know, because at that point you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable spot by saying like, hey, this is me, this is what happened to me. Because when you take that back and you are able to kind of mold it to your control, you can easily kind of retell your story. And I think that's important because a lot of people, it's easy to kind of just, let it take over you and say like, this is me, that happened to me, this is me, and this is who I'm always going to be. And it's like, like you can change and reframe things for yourself in a positive way.
And it's not always easy. I have a piece that just came to mind when I did collage. I wasn't in the mindset of, I'm making collage to cope. Like, that's not where my mindset was at. Because I was in college and I was supposed to take an art class. And it was a paper weaving collage. And it kind of foreshadowed alcohol misuse and sexual assault. Like, I had not experienced that when I made that collage. And I don't know, it's kind of scary to like even look at or talk about, where it's like, what the fuck? Like, I manifested something so negative. And, to this day, those memories or that mindset kind of like comes back. But it's like, well, just because I'm aware of it doesn't mean I'm going through that again. Mm-hmm. So it's just, and my therapist put it in a good way where it's like, when it comes up, just imagine it's like your books on a shelf. I have a lot of books. Mm-hmm. And like, you don't have to read the book to like dust your book stuff. Like, your book, you'd have to open it and read it all over again. Like, just dust it off and be like, oh, I have that book, and then just keep like going. But yeah.
And one thing I recently heard, I was listening to some audiobook, and it was saying like, kind of similar to what you said about reclaiming. It's like sometimes you go through your journey in life, right? Everybody has their own experiences and their own version of what happened. But at one point or another in your life journey, you have to take a look at the darkness and move forward with it, right? So you can allow the light in. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then at some point, regardless of if it's now in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or at your deathbed, you're going to have to come into terms with that part of yourself. Mm-hmm. So, if you allow yourself to put yourself in the position where you can really stare at this in whatever shape and form that means to you, whether it's psychedelics or art therapy or isolation for yourself to, reflect on this stuff, then it's gonna, I think in the long run, it becomes more beneficial and it liberates you, spiritually as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually think of my art practice as a spiritual practice because I grew up in the Catholic church for a little bit, and then we went to like a Christian church, but it wasn't like, and I asked my parents about that, like, why did y'all do that? And they were like, oh, it's just, we went to church, so we just kept doing it. So I've never really subscribed to any particular religion or spiritual practice. It's just kind of like, and it's funny that my medium is mainly collage, or started with collage, because I feel like my spirituality is a collage of like Buddhism or maybe some Christianity, like fables or even children's literature. Like, all of those things influence or are somehow interconnected in my art practice. And
yeah, no, I love that too. Going back to the audio I listened to, there was a specific section saying that sometimes the best ways of navigating through this journey is just to create your own wisdoms. The idea again was that if you're allowed to do all this stuff, that at the end again is going to be another aspect of showing how spiritual maturity, there you go, and emotional intelligence, because that's one thing they don't teach you in school. Like, they don't teach you how to navigate through those emotions. It's just like, hey, sit down, stay quiet.
Do the worksheet.
But you're never allowed to express yourself, and that's one of the things that I feel like, again, off air, you were telling me that's one of those things that you were kind of not allowed to do, and you carried this for so long, and that now you've in the last 3-4 years, you've taken it upon yourself to liberate yourself creatively.
Yep. And through therapy, honestly, like, I feel like everybody, I always say, if you are even thinking about therapy, you should go to therapy, because something in you is seeking to understand yourself. Yeah. So if you're even curious about therapy, like, do it. But if it wasn't for therapy, I probably wouldn't be doing art right now. It's pretty wild to think about that.
That's crazy, because that's one of those things that's like a stigma in like communities, just around here. It's like, are you gonna go to see a therapist? Like, that's local. Yeah. It's like, no, I'm not crazy. Like, I legit need somebody to like listen to me and at least like express myself. But again, it's one of those things that we have to take control of those narratives again. You know, in your case, you've been in that itself, so you can speak for it.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit about your art. Like, what is it, what are you focusing on nowadays? Like, in terms of like what you're trying to create? I know you're interdisciplinary artist, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know what it is. I mean, I've been doing printmaking most of the last year, just because I started printmaking as a part of a group portfolio. So this artist, Israel Campos, shout out to him, Chayote Press. He opened up his studio to 8 artists to come in, create a portfolio. And I had 0 experience printmaking, but it said not required. So I was like, fuck it, let me apply. And something about, because collage was more intuitive. Like, I didn't ever start collaging and be like, I'm going to make this with that and this and that. Like, it was like skimming newspapers or like magazines and finding things and cutting things, and I would keep them in a folder. I wasn't even thinking about making something. It was just things that stood out to me. And then the other process, or for printmaking, is more like, oh, you got to know what you're going to do before you carve and before you even think about like colors and all these things. So the process was so different. So it was really hard at first. But the more I've thought about why I love printmaking so much is because of this, the portfolio piece. It was a 13 color reduction print on a single block. And what that means is I got a big block and then I carved one layer and then I printed that. And then I went back home and then I carved the next layer and then I printed that. So I did that basically a dozen times on the single block. And the piece specifically is also very like positioning myself as a saint, but I'm not a saint. And it's layers, all these layers of experiences that would come up because of the piece and what I'm trying to communicate through it. And it's like, that's kind of how life is. Like, it's a bunch of layers of experiences, of observations, of inspiration, and like how that is communicated through a process, not necessarily even the piece itself, but like the process to making something.
Right.
There's I don't know if you know Miriam Gerba. She's an author. I fucking love her. But she wrote a book called Mean, and then right now her newest book, Creep, she's talking about what the process was for writing Mean. She was going through domestic violence, and one of her main things, like somebody had asked her, because I love watching her interviews. Somebody asked her, oh, it must have been like so cathartic to like write that book, because it's a coming of age memoir. And she's like, it's actually not. Like, you have no idea what position people are in when they're actually making things, and it's painful sometimes to like confront something and communicate it through your art or through your writing. And that's just how I feel about a lot of my work, where it's like, I don't really know what I'm trying to say with a piece, but slowly, the more I meditate on it or sit with it, like the more I think of all the layers of like my experiences, of my beliefs, my aspirations, and it's like, oh, now I have the words. So it's very interesting. But yeah, my current practice is mostly printmaking and honestly just working with the kids.
Yeah. I like what you said about the process. Like, that's important because, you know, sometimes we hyper focus on the end result and we think that's going to be the thing that's going to make us whatever we want, you know, but it's like the process that, you know, the challenges, ups and downs that you're like, you know, you don't want to do it, but then you got to face it and you do, and then you walk out of there like, oh man, this feels cool. You know, that process was what made you. It's one of the things that's really hard to see. Like, for example, if somebody just from the outsider's perspective, like myself, looking at your work, I'm just seeing like the work. You're pumping out work. You're going to, you know, sell at places. You're sharing your art, and I'm like, damn, she's consistent. But you're also going through your own thing, you know, while you're creating all this. And we, you know, a lot of the times we're completely blind to this experience, you know. And now here, listening to you just break this down, I'm just like, I feel like there's another layer that I learned about you, and now I feel like I'm getting a better idea of what drives you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I just wake up in this like wave of anxiety. And it's like, oh shit, what do I do? And, you know, as humans, we're almost wired to do stuff with our hands. Yeah. Whether, you know, in hunter-gatherers, like they hunted and they gathered. Yeah. But, you know, and they even did rock art. So like they were doing art too. And so I feel like that's kind of where like the day-to-day part of it is like, I just feel a lot of anxiety and I need to do something. Yeah. Whether it's journaling, whether it's, I don't know, dancing, movement. Sometimes it's not something physical. It's more, I mean, like tangible as in like a piece of art or a journal spread. It's more like, you know, dancing and moving and just externalizing it somehow, whether it's sharing honestly with my mom how I'm feeling. Because I've been taught again to like suppress and not share, like you're doing too much. But things change. Specifically, my relationship with my mom has changed. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It's like I had the opportunity a couple years ago. Like I had this like, to me, right? This is just from my experiences. I had like this moment where I felt like everything apart, like around me was kind of falling apart. And the only person at that time that I felt like I had like some sort of out with was like my mom. And I went and talked to her and stuff. And then I remember that day she dropped some like truth on me. And I've talked about this on the show, but that truth to me at least was that my dad that I've grown up with forever was not my dad. Like this other guy was my dad, and I'm fucking 27 years old and I'm barely finding out. So I had like this whole identity thing, like who the fuck am I really, you know? And it came to the point where that shit kind of like really impacted me, who I was. And I felt like that to an extent, it was like a part of me in a sense died that time. Because, you know, like everything in life that we do, whether it's something small, when this podcast ends, it's a form of death, right? It's like a form of something ending. And life kind of has these things where no matter what we do, those concepts are still at play. For me, that was like a death of me, because I was like, dude, I don't even know who I was. I was so lost in this void now. Like, who the fuck am I? That I had to kind of restart again, like experiencing things that I thought I liked, or touching things that or going back to things that I thought I liked, and at the same time trying new things. And that kind of, again, started building me up, what it felt like to me from the ground up, you know? And that's when I was able to like, okay, I know my place now. Like, let me see what I can do with this knowledge.
Yeah. It just makes me think of my performance piece. I had never done performance art before, and my group got a grant and mentorship to create a group show. And I have had all these like pieces in my mind of what I wanted it to look like, and artists who had done something similar. And when I finally did it, it was interesting, because I had been doing, I do these outfit checks where I'll like put my phone down and do my little butt kick. And I had a meeting with a friend who was actually also interviewing me. I forgot for what. But he was like, that's performance art. Like, you just doing that on its own is performance art. So when I heard that, I was like, wait, I could do something more. So it was just like another way for me to like bring it in. It was almost like satire, because like my performance was very serious, but also like I wanted it to be almost silly in a way. And like, because I was scolded for making a mess, I was like, I'm going to make a mess. And at the end of the performance, I was super triggered, because now I have this mess and I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I go? Everyone's watching. And it was very real. It was very raw. And yeah, just wild.
Damn. Yeah, it's crazy how these different things impact the things that we do, and then how we perceive ourselves after it's done. Was that performance art? Was that where you're wearing like a dress and then there was like the red paint?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I did see pictures of that.
And I did it in October. It was October 13th and Friday the 13th. And that was intentional as fuck. And also October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I'm a survivor, so I wanted to do that. But I also was aware of like femicide, and the whole white dress was a mock-up, or like I was trying to recreate a childhood photo of me in a little white dress. And kind of like my inner child died, and so the whole thing of the red paint was like kind of getting killed or just staining myself, because I could wash the dress, but it's probably still going to be red. Yeah. And yeah, it's a mix of a lot of things that I was trying to talk about with that.
Yeah. So you're basically, you're pretty open with just trying out new art forms and mediums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think we were just talking that you also had the opportunity to kind of put yourself in the position of the modeling for life drawing at the Cella Art Center a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was for sure my attempt at reclaiming my body, because it's been abused, it's been, without my consent and things like that. And for me, being up there nude was like, yeah, I'm up here nude and, nothing's going to happen to me. And it was almost like exposure therapy, where it's like, I'm literally the most vulnerable that I could be.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like it was my way of kind of gaining control, I guess, but also letting go. It was really cathartic for sure to be up there. It was very empowering. But yeah.
How you're saying it, like, it takes it into a different level, because again, you're doing it for something that's internalized within inside of yourself, and that was your way of taking control back. I've heard a little bit of the exposure therapy. It was like where you put yourself in positions that you're uncomfortable with, right? Something like that, and you continue doing it till you kind of not adapt to it, but what's the phrase?
Just reclaim. I don't know,
reclaim it. It makes sense.
To almost set the stage for something not to happen that has happened. I don't know.
Now, how did you find the, I want to use the word strength to kind of take it upon yourself to reach out and start art therapy or therapy in itself?
Yeah.
How was that for you?
So when COVID hit, I was living with all my family. That's my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, and my niece and nephew. And I had just graduated 2019, and I was still in Riverside late 2019, or after I graduated that summer. But then I went back home and I didn't have a room, so I was sleeping in the living room. And I had zero privacy. I had my art supplies out, and someone would grab my scissors and I would lose my shit. I don't know if it's I'm on the spectrum. I have to be. I just say I'm neurodivergent because I don't know exactly where that lies, but I felt triggered all the time, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I, I didn't like lashing out on my family, and, sometimes it would lead to violence, and it was like, what the fuck? And so I just started going to therapy, and I was going to someone, I say that I was spoiled with the kind of therapy that I got, because I was paying out of pocket for the psychotherapy. So we were doing tapping and eye movement stuff. And so I was just curious about what that looked like, because I had done some therapy in college, but it was more of an ultimatum because I was in a relationship, and he was a psychology major, and he was like, you need to go to therapy, because I was very depressed and suicidal, and he was concerned, and I started going to therapy. We did couples therapy too, so that was kind of forced onto me. But if I had not done that, I wouldn't have remembered, I guess, some childhood stuff that had happened to me. So when I was re-triggered again in COVID with my family all around, it was like, I need to do something, because I know what has happened. A lot of my family didn't know, my parents didn't know, and so I just wanted to, and that was one of my goals in therapy. It was I want to tell people, the closest people to me, and eventually talk to my abusers, which I ended up doing, actually, and it helped me just compartmentalize who did what, because I was molested by my cousin and my older brother, and I still don't know if they knew what each other was doing, but yeah, I feel like I just wanted to dig deeper into how that is still affecting me today, and I think I'm doing better.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that happen to you. But that's intense. But like you mentioned, you've done progress in trying to bring that back to that human aspect of yourself. Like honestly, like just understanding that and knowing that, it just kind of brings some new revelations, or not revelation, like new information to how your art it can be portrayed. You know, because it goes fucking deep. Honestly, like I don't even know. I'm at a loss of words. All I know is that it's powerful, and it speaks volumes of the strength that you have to be able to put yourself in these positions and say, this is what happened to me. This is who I am, but this is who I want to be.
Yeah. And I feel like the work that I do as an after-school art teacher is less about the art and more about like understanding your emotions. Because I have like my art class guidelines. They're not really rules, but it's like all of the rules that I have are things that I hope the students can take into like the real life. Like always do your best, respect yourself and others, take care of your supplies, inspire creativity, stay focused on your art, which to me is something I am still learning to do, because I'm in the art world and I'm like constantly like FOMO, and I'm like not included in things, and I'm like kind of jealous almost. So that's one. And then the other one, take deep breaths, because, you know, I am finding myself even now like losing my breath, and it's part of like a trauma response where I would hold my breath. And yeah, I feel like even teaching art to kids and just understanding their own ways of communicating and expressing themselves it's kind of like healing my inner child. It's like the teacher or the guide that I wish I had when I was making art at my house, because I was getting in trouble for making a mess. But it's like, art is messy. Like I think it's normal, but it's like, well, how can you actually nurture what they're doing instead of like shaming them for what they're doing?
You know what? Yeah, like it kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about just having a reference point for spiritual maturity. And I think that's one of them, is like when you're able to think outside of just yourself. Like, yeah, you know everything that happened to you, but when you're able to take that and apply it to the greater whole, and now you've become the person that you wish you had as a child, that's you're becoming involved at that point, and you're becoming an inspiration to those individuals. And that's something that you can't buy.
Yeah.
You know, that's just something that comes from that individual person. And those kids pick up on it. Like I remember clearly having specific people that in my life that I felt like they were role models, right? You know, and it impacted me for years.
Yeah.
And it's something that somebody, you know, a student in your class or in that workshop that you guys are doing is like, you know what, Miss Cindy, you know, she's the one who allowed me to express myself, to really build this. And all you've done there at that point is inspired the youth, you know, and that's another powerful way of, again, reclaiming your story. That takes so much courage, you know. But
that's true.
You've been at this point at State, you've been doing the workshops or the classes there for how long now? At
the actual gallery, it's been like 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But I've been teaching with them through DFEO for 2 years. This will be my second year.
And that's like the Downey program?
Downey Federation of Education Opportunity, something like that. So there's the district, and then there's the DFEO, and then there's State Gallery or State Arts, because the DFEO also works with like music and sports, and they do their own programs at the same schools when I'm there. So the kids have like, they switch off different things. So art is one of the things that they do.
Okay.
But it's funny because actually I went to Downey High and I exhibited for the first time photography at State Gallery when I was in high school. So teaching there now is just like super full circle. Like I don't even have the words for it at this point. It's about to be 10 years since I first exhibited there, and it's just wild because I went to college and I don't know what was going on with the gallery at that point, and I didn't really follow up because I was, you know, studying and college things. But coming back has been just like, I would have never imagined I would be doing this at all.
So you grew up, you said, for the most part in Compton?
In Compton up until 8th grade. Okay. And then we moved to Downey. So I went to Downey High School.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I saw that you had some prints of the Compton Fashion Center, all that stuff, right? Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because I remember, I think didn't that place get replaced by, or it got replaced by Walmart or something? Yeah, it did. Yeah,
wild.
Yeah, I remember passing through that spot, always seeing the fashion center, the big bold letters, you know? Oh,
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because I grew up in Cudahy, like Cudahy Bell area. So that's been like my rumbos for the last like 15, 20 years now, you know? Yeah, no, my parents moved there in 98. But yeah, no, it's been awesome just to see, like, at this point, again, like I mentioned earlier, we've taken upon ourselves to be responsible for the creative expressions that we see around us, right? We have State Gallery, like I know little galleries around here for a while, you know, Sela Art Center, like all these things that just pop up to allow ourselves to find our footing and see what we can use what medium we can use to express ourselves. For yourself, like, are you exhibiting any work coming up, or like, do you still have stuff?
I'll be at the Southgate Museum in April. I'm currently exhibiting at Art Space. I think it closes April 4th.
That's the Palestine one, right?
Yeah. And then I have another piece at the Mexican Consulado. But I don't know if it's an ongoing exhibit. I don't know how it works. I didn't even ask. I should email them. But that's where my 13 color reduction print is at. And that one is, I don't know, it's just probably like my main piece right now.
Because you had stuff in Ontario, no? Like, what were you doing there?
I exhibited there maybe like 2 years ago. And then I've just been in contact with them and I've done some workshops.
Okay.
Yeah, I did print making and then poster making.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the first time I came across you, because I was working, they opened up a new exhibit, Community Voices on Water or something.
Oh, the Conduit?
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, so I helped record some of the interviews that they used for the earphones there. So that's when, I think at that same time, they were promoting some of the events that you were going to do workshops at.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what? That's crazy. You know, we're like both going out there basically to showcase some work. So, that's when I first caught my interest. I was like, I want to see what you're about.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And I'm glad, you had a really interesting creative journey, and I don't think a lot of people can like really comprehend that sometimes, that life just has its moments, and it's up to us to really like step up and be like, I'm gonna do this my way. Damn, Cindy. Damn. Now,
shout out trauma.
Shout out trauma. Oh, no. Hey, but I mean, it's just one of those things. I think there's a saying that's, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but something along the words that's saying that without trauma, we can't really measure the good things, in a sense, like that's not even the saying there. I'm just gonna clarify that to people right now. I just made that up. But I mean, without that, you can't really measure how good things are sometimes.
I wanted to share this quote. Yeah. I'm reading this book. It's called Yellow Woman and a Beauty of the Spirit. It's just essays, but there's a part that stood out to me. It says, "You are never the first to suffer a grave loss or profound humiliation. You are never the first, and you understand that you will probably not be the last to commit or be victimized by a repugnant act." And that's how I feel, because like when I was in therapy, I was also like, my relationship with my mom was changing, and she ended up leaving to Puebla with a boyfriend, and she, my parents were divorcing, and my whole world was tumbling down. And that was like early 2021, I think. And I started in there. I was already in therapy, and in there I was just trying to let go of resentment towards my parents, because, they hit us a lot, and they, did some very humiliating forms of punishment that we never addressed. But the more I went to therapy, the more I talked to my parents about things, I started to realize, like, if that's what I went through, what the fuck did they go through?
Yeah.
And my mom's side, my grandma had 19 kids. Who by choice wants 19 kids? Yeah. Nobody. And to me, it's just patriarchy and domination of women. And, my grandma probably was pregnant every year of her life. And that's so crazy to me. And it's like the stories I've heard from uncles of the types of punishments or what the violence that they saw my grandpa do to my grandma. And it's like, that shit was passed down. Like, humiliation was a form of punishment, and that's what they learned, and that's what they did. And, how do you forgive them, but also, like, it's valid to still feel anger or sadness or those kinds of things. But another friend of mine once shared too, like, when an emotion comes in, like, you're driving, they're the passenger. Like, you can let them in, you know. It's not like, oh, go away, I don't want to feel you. It's like, no, let them in, feel it, be like, what's up, what do you want,
Exactly,
what do you need? And it's, you know, an inner child, you know, maybe it's your teenager self that's still angry or something. And it's just knowing where you're coming from, knowing that it's passed down, and, you know, it stems back to colonization. And, you know, even like the foods or even alcohol, like, we used it as a spiritual practice. Yeah. And these Spaniards came in and were like, no, let's get you drunk so that you can rape your women and kill your children. Like, that's ultimately what happened a lot. And it's, I don't want to say it's normalized, but when I first spoke up about it on Facebook, my family was like, what are you talking about? Like, who? And it's like, it doesn't even matter who. Like, you either know somebody who was abused or you were abused yourself. And it's a sad reality. I don't know the statistics, but even then, the statistics are flawed. Like, a lot of people don't speak up about it. And yeah,
no, that's very true, because, you know, that number can be fucking tenfold, if anything. Damn, thank you, Cindy.
I feel like I've done a live recording, or not live recording, but an oral history on that specific, like, part of my story. Because the concept was like, what is your concept of home? Yeah. And it was like, I don't know, like, it was about sharing, and because home wasn't home. So yeah, it's crazy.
Like, I don't even know what to say.
I think it's normal too, because nobody talks about that shit. Like, everybody and people I personally know that have gone through that, they never talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get angry because I'm like, or whatever. Yeah. But, you know, I don't want, I didn't expect to talk about it, but it's just like, it's what drives me. It's what it's always going to be with me. And it's a matter of like, how do I work with it instead of like pretending it's not there. So
yeah. No, but thank you again. Yeah, if for whatever reason I don't want to just make it seem like my reactions were like not.
No, you're good. Because even like when I told my parents about it, I told them 2 different times. One of the first times I felt like they didn't really hear what I was saying. And then when I told them again years later, they were like, why didn't you tell us? And other responses are always, and in therapy, I was like going through, well, why am I afraid to tell or to confront my cousin? And it was like, oh, I'm afraid he's going to deny it. I'm afraid, all these things come up, and people aren't used to hearing that. So like as a survivor, it's like, you don't really know. You don't have control over people's responses. And I think any response is a normal response. But yeah.
Yeah, no, because I mean, for sure, the last thing I would want is for you to feel like, hey, this guy was like,
he didn't care. No, you're good. No, don't even trip.
Now, if people want to find out more information about your work, if they're interested about knowing more about yourself and just your journey, like where can people find you?
Instagram. Yeah, Cindy is as Cindy does. People think it's Forrest Gump, but it's not. It's actually a quote from Bell Hooks where she says, "Love is as love does. It is our responsibility to give children love. There's no love without justice." And it's the book all about love, and the chapter on children, which it just, when I read that, I was like, holy shit, like it makes sense. And so I kind of, at that point in my life when I chose my username, I was like recently graduated, not really sure what I was doing. And I was like, well, Cindy is as Cindy does. If Cindy's doing it, that's what Cindy is at that moment. So Cindy is as Cindy does on Instagram. I have it on there too. It's my digital journal. So I journal a lot. I have a lot of journals. And Instagram is just another outlet for me. And so Sometimes I get stressed about like not logistics. What is it? Is it logistics? Oh my God, analytics. And I'm like, I need to remember why I'm doing this. It's just to get it out. Like I just want to externalize it, because that's the opposite of depression is expression. And so I'm just like, I just need to get it out. I don't care who's reading. I don't care who likes it. I'm doing it because it's how I process, or how I like to put things out from my mind, my heart, everything.
Seriously, thank you for sharing this with me. I appreciate it, Cindy. With that being said, I hope, people check this out, and we'll see you next time.
See you.
Everybody else, have a good night.
Ven a mi lado y acércate a mí, mírame a los ojos y déjate llevar, amor. Todas las noches, al esconderse el sol, no habrá más frío, nos albergamos en nuestro calor. Quiero que sepas que tú eres mi sol, iluminando lo que está a tu alrededor, y no pudiera yo vivir sin ti, porque yo necesito sentir tu calor. Y estando a solas, yo te apapacharé junto a mi pecho, palabras de amor te diré. Quiero que sepas que tú eres